Ich habe das Vorrecht gehabt, mit John Teelling und Brian Watts fast eine ganze Stunde einfach zu verbringen und über Irish Whisky zu reden. Ich lade euch ein, jetzt hier einfach mal zuzuhören, wie diese zwei sehr kluge Männer ihre Meinungen und auch dann Vorhersagen, was Irish Whisky betrifft, denn mit uns mitteilt. Natürlich auf Englisch.
Thank you very much for the time together here. This is fabulous. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Brian Watts, I'm Distillery Manager at the Great Northern Distillery in Dundalk.
And I'm John Teelling, I'm the chairman of the Great Northern Distillery.
And I call you sometimes the grandfather of modern Irish whiskey.
Well, I don't know about the grandfather, but certainly,
Maybe
yes.
the father?
Yes, we'll take the grandfather, that's fine.
All right, very, very good. So, why the Great Northern Distillery in Dundalk? There's a story behind this because, first of all, you were at something in Cooley, right?
Yeah, about 10 kilometres out the road we had the Cooley Distillery, which we bought, and it was a former alcohol plant, using potatoes originally and then molasses. And the reason for buying it, and in fact the reason for buying this, though it didn't work out as we thought, is that you need 85% of whiskies blended. Most of the distilleries are pots, so they can't make blended whiskey. They can't make grain whiskey. So Cooley had columns, so we bought it and put in the pots. Mm-hmm. And it was a clever idea, but way before its time. Yeah. And when that was sold, my sons decided they wanted to build a premium Potstill operation in Dublin, which they did, and but there was still the need for columns. So with my wife, whom you've just met, we were walking around because Diageo had decided to close their remaining breweries and move everything to the one site, which they've done in Dublin. We walked around this on New Year's Eve 2012, and it's a fabulous site. It's 5.5 hectares, and bought it because, you know, if you have a brewery, you can add bits to the end and change other bits, but basis is still here, and that you have column distilleries. So the original decision, and indeed where we're probably going to go, is to focus on grain whiskey. So we bought the columns from Philly, and they've been in here now since 2015. Is it 2015? But there were three very old but very well maintained brewing kettles, which would have brewed an ale before they even brewed lager, very old. And in a fit of lunacy, probably, thought that we could turn those into pots, which we proceeded to do. But with the maintenance and the changes, we probably spent more on these than we would have had to buy new pots. Now, they're big. So we end up with the two. Now, that's worked out very well in terms of the fact our business was always to make bulk whiskey for other people. We make ingredients, and that's what we're doing. So we now can supply. Brian makes, 5 types of malt? 5 types of Potstill whiskey. Potstill itself, triple, double, peated.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we have grain itself. So we would have the full range of Irish whiskies. And hence the expansions are going. We're going to expand our grain quite dramatically over the coming couple of years. So the original plan will nearly come back to base. Now, malt will be big also. We're already the second biggest distiller in the country.
How big are you?
We're doing about 18 million litres, 16 to 18 million litres a year, which is a million bottles a week. Yeah. Put it for your viewers. 1 million bottles of whiskey a week. We have another 4 million litres of malt coming on stream in January, February. And then we're looking at a significantly increased grain plant. So we go to 2 million bottles a week over the next 2 or 3 years, minimum, maybe 3. So you'll see there's a lot of activity going on there. No problem to Brian at all.
No problem at all. This is just a walk in the park for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why we're both working on a bank holiday.
Yeah, thank you once again for being on a bank holiday. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Brian will be here anyway.
So, yeah, busy times. We're making all the types of Irish whiskey, so we've got all the ingredients necessary to make a blended Irish whiskey. So we can put them all back together again. We make a very clean, sweet spirit from all our products. We will then put it into a very good wood policy. Around 20% of those casks are finished to give a different flavour compounds, and then we put them all back together again in bespoke blends for our customers. So the blending side has also taken off, in the last 2 or 3 years, I would say it's gone from being very quiet
Yeah, I think we
to
got
being
that
a
wrong.
huge part of what we do here. So blended Irish whiskey around the world, an awful lot of it originates from here.
We originally thought that we'd have 20 customers, so we were going to be a bulk producer for other people. And you're now, what, 280?
Yes. I found an email yesterday where I was panicking when we had 60.
Yes. And we originally thought, now our business at the moment is 60% new fill, new make. So we send new make to a large number of customers, which was a surprise in itself. The mistake we made in terms of myself and David Hines basically in planning was that we forgot that the other 40% would mature.
Where?
Well, where is one of the problems? We're handling the warehousing all right, but then what were we going to do with it? So we ended up selling mature whiskey to people who, in fact, in the Cooley days, that would have been retail own label. They only wanted mature. They didn't do new fill. Still don't. But then we had a large number of people figured out that you don't need a distillery to have a brand of Irish whiskey.
True.
And so Brian is supplying them, which means that has grown faster than we thought. And then partially due to his own, I don't know whether it's good or bad,
Madness.
he offered every single person here has their own distinct blend. Now it can be a tiny difference, makes a big difference to taste and nose. And as you say, we've 20 plus different finishes, different types of casks. So if you take the 4 different products, the 20 something different types of finishes, and add them to different ages, we have a big permutation of possible ones. And in fact, they're out there working today, taking out some mature stuff. So that part of our business has grown very fast. And the other one that cut us a bit short was people buying Irish whiskey as an investment.
Right.
That really did, and they wanted it in quantity. It wasn't buying, we don't do single casks, we don't even do pallets. You're talking about large quantities. So, you know, it's increased demand for different things cut us short. So that's why we're having to rush with expansions. And you can only do it as fast as we can, if not, to meet the demand. It's wonderful. We didn't anticipate it.
I'm sure you
No,
did.
we did not.
Is
No.
it mainly North America or is it mainly Asia? Who's buying all the Irish whiskey now from you?
The potential's there everywhere. North America is the established market, but Africa, Asia, Europe, even Eastern Europe was going very well for a
Hugely
while.
for us, hugely.
So the world is opening up to Irish whiskey in a big way. The sweet, clean character is very attractive at the moment, and we can supply the volume to satisfy those markets. I find Africa very exciting.
I
at the
do too.
moment. Yeah.
I mean, Nigeria is a hugely growing. 100% a year it's growing. Okay, from 2, 4, 8, 16. But, you know, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. And maybe this year it'll be 512.
Yeah.
I'm just showing off I can do that. But, yeah, that's the way it's growing. It's grown 5,000% in 6 years. But also, Eastern Europe is huge. Now, Russia was the second biggest market, and that's gone. But the stands are big. I was in Teelling yesterday, which is at the opposite end of the spectrum from us. Jack and Stephen are premium, super premium, and ultra premium brand only. And if you take, they're in Poland, and there were some Poles in the distillery yesterday. They would buy Teelling there on the shelf for €45. The retail own label brand that we would supply the supermarket chain would be 15 to 16. Equally good whiskies. You certainly feel that anyway. Very good whiskies, but you know, totally different product. We're not in the same business at all as them. But as Brian said, markets are opening up to us that we didn't anticipate at all. If we get into Asia in any significant way, we're in trouble. 1% of India would destroy this whole industry. None of us could supply it. I think most of us, and you will hear this during the week, most of us are at full capacity. Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Actually, I hear Scotch is not doing much worse. And Bourbon is worse again. And Japanese, it's wonderful. Young people drinking brown spirits. We're blessed. We really are blessed. Men and women, it's a fantastic market. It kind of crept up on us, I think.
Now, some people do say there's like a bubble.
No.
Will this bubble burst? Or
Yeah,
is
maybe
this
in,
going to be,
maybe in 50 years.
50 years, 50 years.
Well, you know, what people tend to drink in their 30s is what they stick with.
Yes.
And that's why it's so hard to break Scotch.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a new generation. Plus the fact that younger people like sweeter drinks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their Cheerios and their milkshakes and their Coca-Colas.
Yeah.
But what's remarkable, that's all across the world. It's not just in the US.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
And we actually think Africa may even a slightly sweeter tooth.
Oh.
Yeah. Whereas Scotch is kind of bitter, but they are rushing to change as well, which I find remarkable. Being led by Diageo as a force for change, there's an oxymoron. How could that possibly be true? How could that be true? Because they have to.
Yep.
So I think the future is possibly, in fact I know, future is brighter now than it was when I looked at it in 1970. Yeah, it's incredible. Didn't see it.
All right. Well, 1970, I totally agree.
Yes.
So-
Well, even 2001, Jack and I, when we were in Cooley, we couldn't understand why our sales were increasing. Now, it's a nice problem, and they were increasing in the US, but we didn't know why.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't doing anything different. And it suddenly blossomed.
Okay.
And within 5 or 6 years, Cooley was short of stock, short of 3-year-old, which there's 4-year-old. Every indication we maybe are, not will be.
Very, very good. Now, could you introduce yourself a little bit, Brian? Who are you? How did you become the guy here doing all the stuff?
Well, I've now been in Ireland for 5 years. I was obviously trained in Scotland in a number of the distilleries over there, mainly grain distilling. Did very little malt distilling.
Were you Girvan, or where were you?
I was Girvan for a while, and I was at the North British in Edinburgh. So running columns was my forte, and John came and invited me over to see this. When I walked around the site, I could see that there's every toy in the toy box for me to play with. It is a fantastic opportunity here to make very interesting products. I'm allowed to do things in Ireland that I would never get even close to being able to do in Scotland, so putting together some of the blends and tailoring them to the consumers that are going to drink these. For Whisky Live, we've taken it to an extreme. We've gone for a lot of flavour into the blends that I'm going to showcase there. It's not, nobody else has these products on their shelf because I haven't sold them to anybody else, but we've brought along just to show how far you can take Irish whiskey to make it interesting, full flavoured shots, drink with mixer, that type of thing for young consumers. So that's where I believe the future is, and I get a kick out of pushing things in a new direction.
Mm-hmm. Now, isn't it a little bit, I'm just going to say, frustrating to actually produce something where someone else gets the honors and the awards and all those, the recognition, because you're basically behind the scenes here, aren't you?
But the recognition means that they come back here to buy more. And that's where we are.
He sleeps well at night with all the medals that he hasn't got.
I've not got any medals, but I'm happy that our customers do produce the medals, and they're very successful, because their success means that it will be reflected back on us.
A lot of it is in packaging and marketing too, let's be fair. Now, I mean, yes, you take quiet satisfaction, I take more loud satisfaction. There was one show where there were 9 medals and we made 5 of them. But he underestimated himself. You know, big columns. There's really only Irish distillers. Yeah. Cooley has small columns. Well, has big columns but a small capacity. The rest are small. We needed somebody who knew how to run grain whiskey because, like Brian says, I also agree there's a big future because it's light and sweet, lovely smell in the distillery. And so sometimes in a Potstill distillery, barley mightn't be as nice a smell. And so we needed somebody who was good on that, and you've managed to, Brian, you have grown up 2 or 3 younger ones that can work on the columns.
Now, this is exactly my next question, if I may. Most of the distilleries I'm now visiting have non-Irish distillers. Once again, did we miss something in Ireland to produce?
Well, there was only one.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, there was a monopoly, and nobody.
So what should we be doing now? I mean, you're training.
Oh, well, yeah, he's adding to it, but you can't train them that fast. And there's a good program here. I mean, you have a good program.
We've got a good talent coming through. that will challenge me and replace me eventually.
Yeah.
So the distillery's in a good place for these people gaining the experience.
They need
that's
skills.
needed.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, in a way, Brian it's good that he didn't have experience on pots, because you might have been hung up on how you made, double distilled Scotch malt with a certain way. Whereas this is not totally different, but substantially different.
Yeah.
And Potstill, no Scotsman had ever made Potstill in his life. But we couldn't get, when we set up Cooley, do you think Irish distillers were going to give us any of their staff? They wouldn't give us a supply of grain whiskey, so they weren't going to give us any staff. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I would be the exact same. So I'm not faulting them at all. I think they do a good job. So we were lucky we had David Hines, who wasn't a distiller, but he was chemical engineer. And but given this size, you needed some qualified people. But I think now on the distilling side, we would put them through, they have to go through their exams.
Yes.
You hire good quality people. He's been very lucky in that you got some good graduates who were prepared to work in the control room. In other words, work at the front, which is a very good thing, and we're full marks of them. They've done their exams, and you have 3 of them. And you need that kind of cover with 24/7. But your point is good. We need to add more skills. I'm a great believer. I think I'm slightly biased. I think Irish education is very good, and I think the very good ones that come up with very good education helps. Yeah. So if they know what they're doing, and you've seen it. Mm-hmm. Now they can be very bright people can be a bit different, but. I think if they have the ability, you can hone it. But we have to develop it. In this place, and we need more.
Yes, that's been the hardest part, is we can't bring in too many new people too quickly. You need to have experience there to show them the ropes.
Is it more or less an on-the-job training for 2 to 3 years, or how do you go about that? You
can come in with a formal education, which is a great foundation to build on, but you're correct, it does take 2 or 3 years to understand how this business works.
And to give them confidence themselves. I mean, we look at them now, you certainly 1 or 2 you have, and the third one needs more confidence. I was saying that, look, I can run this on my own, because it's a big thing. You're managing people and you're managing big processes. 1 million bottles of whiskey a week, you don't want to screw up. And if you do, somebody will come after you very quickly.
Mr. Teelling, I'm sorry.
or some, what's that yield? Yeah, exactly. No, we're blessed with that. What we're very lucky with here, I mean, again, we didn't know this at all, is being located 50 miles north of Dublin. Dublin is nearly a suburb, and a number of people with lots of skills for if you say second-tier management, have been commuting to Dublin, and they don't want to. And in fact, a number of the people you have on site now, of your senior guys, are guys. One man said to me, he says, for 13 years, I drove to the railway station, parked my car, got the train, came back. And he says, I want to see my kids, training in the under 7s or whatever it is. And we have another lady joining us exactly the same. And indeed, the young lady who joined us last week, same thing. Highly qualified, highly experienced. I'll have enough of this. I'm not going back to working in the office on the south side of Dublin, an hour and a half from here. Whereas in Dublin, the boys, on the other hand, find it harder to recruit staff. And harder to hold staff because of the availability. But that's another thing. We're blessed with that. I was just walking around with my wife. You saw her there. Now, natural gas comes direct, dedicated pipeline just here. Water, dedicated pipeline at the end here. I mean, these things, because the Diageo did it right. They just did. And the quality of a lot of their stuff is very good.
Yeah.
They put in the best of equipment.
So I'm sure we're going to see some of this equipment, but could we just go through this very quickly? Your barley, basically, you get from...
That's Irish barley.
Yes.
That's grown in this side of the island. Mm-hmm. So it's malted for us, and it comes in.
Do you have one dedicated malter?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. The one exception to that is when we do peated malt. Yeah. Nobody peats malt in Ireland, and we have to bring it in. Yet.
Yes.
Yet. Yes, and the product we make is a triple distilled peated malt, so it is smoky rather than medicinal that you may get from a double distillation. So again, a very interesting Irish twist on what the Scots have been doing for many, many years. The maize, which is the main feedstock, 94% of the grain whisky production that comes from Bordeaux. So it will be shipped directly from Bordeaux into the harbour in town here, stored in the harbour and then brought onto the site as well. So the logistics for that work very nicely. Our yeast, the other main component, comes from the UK on a weekly basis. We're on pressed yeast at the moment, but we're investigating using the cream yeast alternative, which would be one tanker, possibly a fortnight to start with, and then building up from there. So we will then dose in a cream yeast. So we're moving in that direction as well. Casks have been a challenge for us, getting them from the USA, and the scale we're using them at the moment. There's rather a large requirement.
There's a shortage at the moment.
Yes, and we're filling approximately 2,900 a week. That's possibly quite modest compared to some of the other huge, monstrous distilleries, but it seems a lot to us.
For Ireland, it is a lot.
It is a huge amount.
And
if
it's a
you
huge
grossed it
amount
up,
of
it's
cash.
140,000 a year.
Yes.
Now we have some coming back,
Yes,
but we're still a very large customer for new casks for the 3 or 4 big American ones. We're a big customer.
and casks are something that you have to be just in time. You can't have them hanging around for too long or they dry out. So they have to meet your production demands and just arrive on the island enough time to be processed and prepared for
I'm
the
sure that
cask
has been a
filling.
difficulty in the last 6 to 9 months.
Oh, it's
Caused
been
some headaches, huh?
it's been very interesting. Yes, so an awful lot of the job is logistics and making sure that things do arrive on site to keep the process flowing. So far, so good. Again, I'm the one touching wood now.
No,
We've
we're
been
all touching the
successful.
wood, yeah.
We've been successful.
And how big is your team of people that are in the, not just distilling, but doing the logistics, making sure everything works here?
That's debatable. By my calculations, it's 64 as a total team now for 24/7 for everything. That includes the accountants, myself, everybody that works on this site. There's 64 employees, which is nearly doubled since I started here 5 years ago. So that's why we're saying the recruitment to double your workforce in 5 years, and the young people see the opportunity for it to double again and them to make their mark on a growing business like this. That's one of the big attractions for them to come to work for the Great Northern.
Exactly. Wow. Very, very good. And you are the head. You are the HR department, or who?
Yes.
I wear a number of hats. Yes,
Sure.
that's one of them. So
Okay. So you hired each and every person.
yes, I've started delegating some of that to the younger people as well. They come in because they're the ones that have to work day to day. So cultural fit is a big part of recruiting the right person. Their attitude and willingness to learn is something that you have to, if you're stuck in a control room for an 8-hour or a 12-hour shift with 2 men you don't like, it can be a very difficult situation. So we have to go for and try and keep the family atmosphere that has been here from the start. As we grow bigger, it's a more and more of a challenge where you don't know everybody's name and and you don't know their family circumstances. But we're small enough at the moment that everybody can work that way.
Very few white collar,
Yeah.
because again, if we're selling on contract, we don't need a big accounting department.
Or marketing.
This is the marketing department.
Exactly.
That's another hat.
That's frightening. This has to change because you can't handle 280 plus new contacts, plus repeat business, plus developing products. You can't do it. I mean, I come here and bless, but that's all I do. I can't do anything else. So that has to grow. But it will be commercial rather than marketing. And there are no plans to go forward. So there will be stress and strains down the road, I'm sure, to maybe you could do bottling, but we're not into bottling. We have a brand which we've backed off, really. I mean, Burke's is somewhere here, but we don't want to develop it as a brand. We're not going to compete with our customers.
So bottling is not on site.
Nope.
So, okay.
Nope, nothing here. Only that's why you can do that 1 million bottles a week with 60 workers, and 24/7 operation as well, because we have simply a lot of it's computer controlled.
Yes.
Yeah.
And bottling is something that can be done in Africa to bulk or ship
And it
in
is
bulk.
for our
Or the
customers. It is being
States, or
done there.
we send ISO tanks out. There was one stage where we were sending 6 ISO tanks a week of the mature spirit. We were actually taking it out of the warehouse quicker than it went in the first place. That's quite a scary place to be.
It is. It's still not right because, I mean, as I say, our sales of mature whiskey are growing faster, way faster than what was left after we sold 60% of the new fill. So we only had 40% to play with. And remember, we weren't 24/7, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We were 24/5. We only went 24/7 on the grain this year, 24/7 on the malt last year.
Right.
So it'll be there will be hiccups and there will be strain. We had to write to customers and saying, we can't guarantee supply now. That's a shocking thing and a very unfair thing to say to somebody who is putting his heart and soul and money and other people's money into developing a brand and marketing. And then they come back to us and say, sorry about that, we haven't got it. We're doing our best. We really are. And we've written to them and say, look, you haven't the money to do a 5-year contract. If you have, you should be spending it on marketing. But we try and do something with them that you can reserve it in some way, which is not good for us either. But so far we've been all right, I think.
We have not let anybody down
No,
yet.
and we're not going to. If we can possibly avoid it. I hope it won't happen. I really do, because it's not right. Our business is to give it to you when you want it.
Right.
Selling it's hard.
And it has been difficult now to actually plan the expansion and actually get the equipment you need, or is it just a matter of time and patience?
That's a good question, isn't it? Remember, the malt expansion was originally going to be in that building, and that will be, which is still a beautiful building. I know.
Are
eventually.
you actually adding pot stills? Or
Oh, yeah.
We're
fermentation?
adding pots.
At the moment, we're adding 6
Oh, wow.
up here, using some spare capacity in our existing malt mashing areas like that. How many fermenters are going there shortly? 8?
8 new ones.
8 new ones in front, just out here. The grain plant, we have the fermenters. We would have silos, old fermenters that will be turned into silos. So you're looking at the columns.
Okay. Thinking of how do you turn a fermenter into a silo? But
No
that's
problem.
okay, I guess.
They're rather large fermenters.
Thank you. I was thinking a little bit smaller.
No,
but it's
no.
okay.
No,
Wait a
they're
second, I'm
rather
hearing
large,
this.
yes.
Oh, they're big.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
My brain was really working there.
It's a question and very interesting, which again you couldn't have done in your previous employer, so everything would have been planned out formally. I think maybe the size of the grain plant is the musings of David Hymes at 4:30 in the morning when he's awake. And that would be utilising the equipment that we have to its full capacity. And by doing that, now it means, of course, we won't sell the quantity we're trying to make that fast, but it'll be built and it will be set up in a modular type of basis. And if you have 2 separate grain plants, you can switch on one versus the other. And you'll do the same with the malt. You'll do different things on the malt plants. You'll have 2, certainly, and almost certainly 3 malt plants, and that'll give you a lot of flexibility.
As to what might be dedicated only to
Yeah, precisely. And that means you minimise your costs. Our mantra is to be the lowest cost producer outside of Irish distillers. I'm not even sure of them. I'm not, because they would have a lot of beautiful equipment which you must appreciate. We don't have beautiful equipment, but it works. And so our amortization and interest and things like that would be lower per unit. Now we would know that from our costs. So that's the idea. If we have, we'll have 8 million malt next year. We'll have 11, 12 million grain. I'm probably going to maybe 3 times that, if not 4 times that. And then again, this can handle it here, the gas can handle it, the water can handle it, so we don't have to worry about that. Now, other bits and pieces are a huge bottleneck, but they'll be fixed. So that's the logic on it, to be, if you like, the lowest cost producer for the industry. The big gorilla down in Middleton, we're not after them in any way.
The most difficult thing is to anticipate where the Irish whisky industry is going to be in the future. The only one thing we can say for certainty is that 5 years ago we got it wrong in the mix of products we were making at that time, and saying what the demand would be for that in 4 or 5 years' time from around the world. So the stock we laid down 5 years ago was not a great fit to where we are today.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well,
what did you lay down and what should you lay down?
Irish Potstill has exploded as a category. Irish peated malt, the triple distilled peated malt that we laid down, it was seen as a sort of a niche product.
Yeah, very niche, yes.
They're an experimental even, yeah.
Yes.
It's proved extremely successful, and it's a huge component in a lot of the blends that customers are selecting from us. So it's in there with the touch of smoke that is the turf character that people associate with Ireland. Sitting in an Irish bar, you expect a turf fire, that smoky flavour, and that's the character that the blend will give to you. Also works extremely well as a seasoning in a blend. A touch of smoke can bring out all the rest of the flavours very nicely. So when I'm going for a full flavoured blend, I will tend to put a touch of smoke in there. So that's working, but you know, if you try to satisfy the demand for all the people that want a single peated malt,
We can't. That one we can't do.
if you didn't make it, you can't sell it.
Exactly, 5 years ago, 3 years ago.
Well, what's interesting to take that, because we obviously spent a fair bit of time looking at this, is say there hadn't have been the pandemic, say we hadn't have lost 2 years. Now look at the problem we would have. It'd be worse. And if you go from here 10 years, I might think even quicker than this, but we say 10 years because I'll be conservative. Irish whiskey could be 30 million cases. That's 120 million litres of new fill has to be made. Latest 6 years from now. Latest. That will require building. Now, 120 million litres total capacity. There's, say, 70 million Irish distillers at the moment. There's, say, 18 here, say 16, 18 Tullamore, a bit in Bushmans. The rest are small. So that capacity, if you believe that number, which I absolutely believe, and have always believed, that it will be there. I say to the Irish Whisky Association, which helps them, I say, I think we're short. And that's how we're doing it. So, you know, if we added 20 million litres of grain capacity here, I think that'd be used up quite quickly, because 85% are going to be blended anyway. Because this infamous ladder of opportunities that Jack and Stephen talk about, you know, you go in at Jemison and then we give you some real products to move up to. When the industry grows, and we're even seeing that in Nigeria, and I'm sorry for pointing, is very quickly somebody says, you know, look, get me the market leader at a cheaper price. So the retail own label appears, and that's our 40. And they can be big in these markets. I mean, they are not like 500 cases, so no interest to them. And in any of the big markets, and we're seeing some of them talking to us, new ones recently. I mean, big international. We thought we'd run out of international companies to deal with. We're a 90-10. We're not 80-20 in terms of 20% of our customers take it. We're 10% of our customers take 90% of our output. Okay. And that hasn't stopped. To the delight of myself and my colleagues, that if the new ones, big ones, keep coming to us.
Yes. But an Indian customer of ours spoke to me and said, "Why do you keep talking of India as if it is one place?"
Yes.
Yeah.
He says there's so many time zones, there's so many different characters around there. He says concentrate on one province, and no, he says concentrate on one city and one province. He says no, concentrate on a quarter of one city and one province in India, and they could consume all the capacity you could make. So it's a big world out there, and it's just making sure.
And we make that mistake here. I will say to people, Nigeria, everybody puts their say Nigeria. There's 250 million Nigerians. Now, okay, there's Muslims there. There are 20 million in Lagos people. Yeah. And if 1% of that population was middle class, moving to all kinds of things, not just whiskey, that's 2.5 million, equal to 50% of the population of this island, of this country. So, you know, And let's not go to the big ones like the Indonesias, the Thailands, the Philippines, the Indias, and the Chinas. Somebody came to us here a couple of years ago by Shenzhen, and I think it was Shenzhen duty free, and they said, look, our in that small area of Shenzhen was 40 million. Yeah. You can't get your head around that. So that's why I'm not concerned. Will there be, as you say, is it a bubble? I don't think it's a bubble. Is there going to be overcapacity? Maybe momentarily. Undoubtedly, some of the people who lay down their own whiskey with interest rates rising and things like that will struggle if they can't get the markets. We did. So I'm only talking from bitter experience. Yeah. We had, in our worst days, we had 56 years inventory. That wasn't great. The bank wasn't too impressed with us. No. Didn't tell the shareholders.
All right. Excellent. Now let's go very briefly. Many people think the future of Irish whiskey is going to be single pot still. You say yes, but if you go over to Scotch whiskey, 90% is still blends, 10%, maybe 12, 14% is single malt, and so you're going to do exactly the same thing with Irish whiskey as well. Hey, it's going to be a blended Irish whiskey. We need the grain. No one else is producing grain. Therefore, you're the person who's going to be producing that and blending it and then letting other people sell that. One example for me was, for example, in Germany. You actually worked together with David Heinz, together with St. Kilian. You provided them with the whiskey. Now it's an international blend. We have German whiskey and we have Irish whiskey together with their products. Is that also happening any place else in the world where you are taking different products from different countries and blending them together, or is that fairly special?
Well, the blending would take place in these other countries. We wouldn't import to Ireland. We would export to them in bulk to allow them to put a local twist on things. Mm-hmm. But I have customers sending me casks from Italy and Greece at the moment, but wine casks from their regions. That mean something to themselves. I will finish an Irish whiskey in it and we will export again in bulk to them to have a Greek twist on an Irish whiskey, which will be very interesting in itself, something different.
I think your point is one that does cause us a lot of thought. If you take all the hype around Potstill, Potstill is only a couple of 100,000 cases still. Now, Redbreast, I think it's less than 200,000 cases. And every small pot still distillery in the country is making pot still. Some of them are making largely pot still. There'll be a lot of pot still out there. Now, is it going to grow? Yes, it is uniquely Irish at the moment. It's a specialty product and it's dear. It's expensive. So for the average person starting off, no. They want to do that. Also, it's a creamy taste. It's easy to drink pot still, but it will be expensive. It'll be like, in other words, Irish category will have single malt and pot still, whereas Scotland only has malt and blend. We're distilling, which is unusual enough to see the three at the one time.
Well, that would be great.
I think they've just started pot still, a new product. Yes. Literally, they just were being mashed in, as I was there. Yeah. It was literally going into the
Potstill back into the mash. That's what I've been working on all morning. Is the production
it's a 50-50, an unusual recipe.
Okay, wow.
Irish Potstill innovative recipes is possibly a very interesting avenue for Irish whiskey to go down because the Scots don't make an equivalent and using the different grain types. But that will allow a whole new sphere of innovation in Irish whiskey to come ahead, and there's some interesting things going on.
Maybe just one more question with Potstill. In America now, the Bright Nation and so on, they're actually making Potstill in America. I originally thought it was a protected product of Ireland, which it's not. Just like you can't have anything Scotch outside of Scotland or bourbon outside of America, Potstill is allowed to be made any place, basically, but traditionally it was made here. Should they protect it? Is this something that should actually be protected by a trade agreement?
I'm not so sure it is.
I don't think anything is particularly protected, or it can't be Irish Potstill whiskey unless it's made here and sent out to the States, but by the same token, I can make bourbon whiskey here if I so choose. I just couldn't call it bourbon whiskey here. It could be bourbon.
And he does.
It
That's
could be
beside
a
the
sour
point.
mash.
Yeah, and we
Or
could,
rye.
rye.
He doesn't want to make, because it's hard to.
It's difficult to make, but I'm a big fan of a good rye whiskey, and an Irish rye whiskey would be
Which they used
something.
to 100 and odd years ago.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
they made rye whiskey in Ireland. Yeah.
So I've made one mash with a big proportion of rye whiskey into it. So it's an Irish Potstill, but has a lot of, maybe 2 tons out of the 11-ton mash bill was rye.
So more than the allowed percentage, so it's
Yes.
non-conformed.
So by the time this comes off age,
Yeah.
then I believe the regulations will have changed. If they haven't, this will be an Irish whiskey.
Yes.
So I think it will have changed by then.
So what do we hope? 2024, 2025?
Oh,
What are we looking
I
at?
think
more.
sooner than that. I think sooner than that. It's
Oh, they're working changing the regulations now.
Yes,
You're
but
on the
sometimes the machinery
Yes.
of the government is very, very slow.
So I only made this last year,
Okay.
and it is spectacular. It is a hugely interesting product, and again, innovation. That's where it's going to come in Irish whiskey.
That is a mantra. It's written across our foreheads. We have to make the products that people want to drink. I have no hang-ups on what is whiskey, remotely. It's what people want to drink. And young people are new markets with different tastes and different flavours. We have to provide a product suitable to the quality. So they're making changes to the GI at the moment, the technical file, which will be good. There are, of course, conservatives that would like to restrict things, and we have to watch that with an eagle eye. Because, I mean, the things are silly. You're not trying to damage the reputation of Irish whiskey at all. If you make a bad product, people won't drink it. But I think innovation, and you see what's happening. You mentioned Potstill in America. What about malt whiskey in America?
Mm-hmm.
Growing
we
like
have a definition,
growing like topsy.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. And we laughed at the late George Moore, Lord rest him, who was born outside the gate here, literally outside the gate. And he, in the Virginia malt distillery there. And now there must be 20 or 30 of them going around, if not more. So, yeah, there are more, are there? Yeah, they're all, fair enough, good luck to them. But you might have American malt, but if you want an Irish malt whiskey, it'll be Irish malt. The Scots, when we started in Cooley, said, Ireland can't make malt whiskey, forgetting that we made it before them. Long before them. Look, Irish whiskey has to sell on its reputation, and it has to sell on its quality. Mm-hmm. But it can't be. The slower and more conservative Scotch is, the better for us. I'd like them to stay. We're very much in favour of conservative Scotch GI. But people in different continents have different tastes. And they're not wrong. There's nothing wrong with them, as long as the quality is okay. I don't know where that'll be in 10 or 15 years' time. That's changing. I mean, the amount of innovation. There are strange things infusing and all of these things we can't do. What would we not able to do? Honey flavoured.
Yeah, it's traditional casks, so the maturation's a very interesting side of things as well, as casks that have been used for traditional products. Bit of a debate going on about that at the moment. We had one customer that put it into a cask that had previously held maple syrup. Yeah.
Maple syrup is the one I'm thinking about.
It was very, very, very sweet, but it was too sweet for my palate, as me too. So you've tried this product. Yeah, it's a liqueur.
Rye and a maple syrup can almost be okay, but sometimes it's just overpowering.
But it's been very successful in the States. That's we see. I'd hesitate to say now. Apologies for what I'm going to say here. These guys might be too old. You're not 22 years old and used
52,
to drink.
Sorry.
Yeah. You see, that's what it is, gentlemen. Yeah. You're more conservative in your palate now than people who never had whiskey, never drank whiskey. Suddenly they get this nice sweet whiskey. Think it's lovely. They never drank.
Yeah.
Do I care? No, I'm delighted. The more that they want to do, as long as we keep it on quality. But there's a huge amount of innovation in America, and you can rest assured there will be in Japan when they get their head around it, and probably in the new Chinese distilleries that are being built. You saw the one in the paper yesterday, some Irish guys involved in supposedly the biggest distillery in the world. I read the article a second time. I think it's a load of nonsense, but anyway. But they are building, they've actually turned the sod up what would be a very big malt distillery in China. I don't know how many litres. They didn't give it. I deliberately read it a second time. I was saying, how many million litres are in this? And I couldn't see it. So, but that will be different. Everything about it will be different. The grain will be different anyway.
Yeah.
The barrels will be different. The warehousing will be different. So, be a different product. No harm if it's good.
Now, you've been doing this here for, what is it, 8, 9, 10 years?
No, we took it over in 2013. We couldn't begin to distill until about 15 because Harp wanted to slow its exit.
Right.
Their new plant didn't work in Dublin. So we agreed to that. I think we actually started rebuilding or building and adapting in 2014, and we came on stream at the end of 2015. You have some from the very end, yeah. So we're only 7 years. Just
exactly. So you basically have used your first fill cask entirely.
Yes.
Now you've done some
Yes.
second fill casks.
Yes.
What is the plan? Will you also be using third fill cask? When do you get rid of those casks? And what's the plan with that cask management?
we don't know.
The cask management, that's an interesting question. So our customers have been used to a top-class wood policy. Second fill cask, sometimes I prefer a second fill cask to a first fill cask. Third fill, not so certain about, but I have certain products that where we'll use new American oak. So if I mature in a third fill cask and then transfer to the new oak, I can have a use a third time out of the cask as a maturation vehicle, and then put the flavour on with a short spell in new oak, and that's become a big part of our business as the new oak is coming through. So yeah, that's good. Gives the big Bourbon-esque flavour that you can get, and the colour from a natural means. You're not having to use caramel on a young blend. You can get the big vanilla hit, and you can trace that back to a third fill casks. Don't think we would ever have a use for a fourth fill cask. That they'll go off to be flower pots.
A lot of flower pots here, yeah?
So yes, the wood management we've got, well,
That's growing, as you can imagine, as we now have second fill.
Yeah.
That, and the other thing that's growing dramatically is warehousing.
Yes.
so around 340,000 casks in our bond at the moment. So it takes a bit of management. We've got some of the young Irish talent looking after that, databases, and you would be very surprised if a business this size didn't have a database to manage that stock. So we're watching all these casks. And
We have to. The revenue would kill us if we missed them.
Yeah.
And rightly so. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
No.
And planning permission for new warehousing? Has that been a
We
difficulty?
failed totally. So we, on that, it was my colleague David wanted to buy. I have a huge weaknesses. I don't believe in owning property. Just don't believe it. It's too much hard work. And at all. So I thought we'd rent it. Let somebody who wants to specialise in warehousing, even though we do all the work. And
But you do own this.
everything here. Oh yeah. But this was the distillery is a different business.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, we can rent warehouses. You can't rent distilleries, really. Now, maybe you can. But our money would have been limited. And we wanted to put that into whisky and buildings. And still is now. We're hoping that our expansions, that we can fund our expansions without going outside looking for external funding. I mean, yes, but that will not allow us to build warehouses. What we're doing is we're entering into 15-year contracts for people to build 180,000, 630s. But we're having the people looking after acquiring and fitting out the warehouses will have to grow. That section has to grow, because that's, with 2,900 a week, and then stuff coming back, it's a big job. I mean, there are more trucks going in and out. It's a big job. But our current plan is to continue to rent, not to buy. We didn't get planning permission for Kilcurry. We bought a lovely farm right on the border, spent a pile of money. Didn't like that. And doing all the right things and having 9 specialists telling us all the birds and the bees and the bats and all the things, and it didn't work at all. So let the people who know how to get planning permission get it, not us.
Very good. Should I ask anything else that you would like to mention now?
No.
No?
I
covered most
think,
of the
as I
topics
say,
there that are-
we're very low profile. We prefer to stay that way and let our customers do the talking.
Yeah.
They do the hard yards. They
Yes.
get their products on the shelves. They do the bottles, the labels. It's their glory, and we'll just support them.